All right, welcome back. Law to Speak for Yourself, the most fearless show in sports. Yeah. Whitlock and Wiley, NBA champion Kendrick Perkins, an NBA agent and former Chicago Bull, BJ Armstrong are back. Let's move to the Eastern Conference Final, where the Bucks are looking to bounce back tonight. After dropping Game 3 to the Raptors in double overtime Sunday night, Giannis Antetokounmpo was terrible in Game 3, putting up 12 points and 8 turnovers before fouling out. But when the Greek Freak was asked if he was disappointed in his performance, he pushed back hard, saying, quote, "Hell no, I'm Giannis. What I've done in my life so far, sending money to my family, put my brothers in private school, taking care of family in Nigeria and Greece, disappointed in a game? I'd be disappointed in myself if I was disappointed." All right.
Rap game strong.
Are you disappointed with Giannis's reaction?
I'm not, actually. It's amazing that we love the cliches that come from coaches until they take human form. You know, one of the cliches you always hear is stay even keel. Don't get too high with the wins and don't get too low with the losses. Don't really look into it that seriously. Just be ready for the next effort. And he's actually living that through. And now we have a problem with that. So it's crazy that the same thing can be looked at so many different ways. And this kind of reminds me of a guy who's like, I'm not going to admit to any failure to show any weakness. And I like that. I remember watching a lot of boxing matchups, and you see them when they have that face-off right before the fight starts. And there was a day where, man, you better look them in the eye. If you don't look in the eye, you weak, you soft. And then there was a day where, like, don't look them in the eye, because if you look them in the eye, you're going to humanize something you're about to destroy. And it just always shifts. This is a guy who just basically said, look, game over, can't do anything else about it, ready for the next one. No, I'm not mad at myself and what I did. I will be ready for the next one. Not mad at that.
I'm Giannis. I love it. I love the fact that he just came out and said, took the responsibility of, maybe I didn't play my best game, but you know what? I'm here. And the most amazing thing is they still had a chance to win that game. They were right there. Yeah. So Giannis understands, I think, as a young player, it's great to see that not only, he doesn't have to have a great game on the offensive end, he can affect the game in other ways. Even though he may statistically didn't play his best game, he still had an opportunity to win a game. So if I were him, I would have the same amount of confidence going into Game 4.
Well, I love it. I'm Giannis, but he has to back it up. KD said, you know who I am, I'm Kevin Durant, and he went out and backed it up. Giannis, he got to back it up, but guess what? He's still being guarded by one of the best defenders in the league in Kawhi. So at the end of the day, Giannis does have a history. If you look at the one game, the bad game that he had against Detroit, he bounced back and came back and had 40. You look at the one bad game in Game 1 that he had against the Celtics, he came back with a 29-10 and a blowout. So he lives up to, you know, he takes pride in, for as like, if he have a bad game, you expect him to come out and he's going to produce tonight.
I think the only way he couldn't be disappointed is because he didn't watch the tape. If he watched the tape, he'd be disappointed. Game 3, he was miserable. And I really don't, he may have an okay game, but I don't expect him to be phenomenal in this game. Toronto has a defensive scheme led by Kawhi Leonard on him, but they put a little wall around for Giannis that causes him to turn the ball over, limits him in what he can do. And they got to the end of that game before he fouled out, and he really wasn't even an option for them offensively. He was not an option. It was Chris Middleton. It was George Hill. It was Brogdon. It was anybody but Giannis. And at some point, I was like, Giannis helps him on the defensive end. He's certainly a freak on the boards. But I was like, on the offensive end, they need to get Mirotic out here.
Absolutely.
And so I think they're going to frustrate him again tonight.
But I think Toronto win the game, because even though the game was close, Toronto had a few players that didn't play well also. I mean, Kawhi Leonard was 11 for 25. Danny Green struggled. Lowry fouled out. He didn't have his best performance. And obviously Van Fleet was terrible. Well, he's been terrible all playoffs, but he got to give us something. He got to give Toronto something. But I think Toronto comes out and get this win tonight. And just to piggyback on what you said, I think they do have a scheme for Giannis, but Boston also had a scheme, and he he had to go back and watch film because he still got to where he needed
Boston
to
had
go.
a scheme, but no Kawhi at the head of it.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah, but it takes you double
I
overtime
agree.
to beat me in a close contest. And I'm Giannis, and I have an off night. I tied my career high in turnovers, and we still in the ball game. Like, for him to sulk in that moment, I think I would have been and had a greater reaction to that versus a guy who's just like, I'm Giannis, taken from Kevin Durant. I'm Kevin Durant. And I like this response to a guy who knows how close they really were. And he still had a positive plus minus compared to Middleton and some of the other guys.
One of the things I want to point out is game one, Toronto still had the confidence to feel that they could win that game. Mm-hmm. You know, and being I was in Chicago last year at the pre-draft, the Toronto Raptors felt that they had that game in hand, if you will, and they have the confidence to do it. Many people aren't talking about it. This is a must game from a playoff perspective if you're looking at this series for the Milwaukee Bucks. Because if you get back to 2-2, going back to Milwaukee, Toronto feels that they have a chance. They felt they really won that game, but they did everything but win that game in game one. So if I'm Milwaukee right now, I'm putting a lot of emphasis on this game, trying to get up 3-1, going back, knowing that I can close out the series.
All right, before we go, I want to explain why my favorite athlete, Magic Johnson, just set a very dangerous precedent for young people. He quit his job as president of the Los Angeles Lakers and offered a weak justification. It was no fun working with Rob Pelinka. He wanted my job and he backstabbed me. Magic took his ball, his $500 million bank account, and went home. It's childlike behavior that many in the media are justifying as righteous because Magic lives in the protected space of celebrity adulation. It's also being defended because many of the ex-athletes discussing the issue on television are inexperienced in the politics of corporate America. During his ESPN interview on Monday, Magic seemed baffled that his decision-making faced mild resistance within the Lakers organization. He was equally troubled by Pelinka's ambition and gossiping. According to Magic, Pelinka spread the accurate rumor that Magic rarely showed up in the office to work. Let me break the news to Magic and any young person trying to learn from this Lakers fiasco. The typical workplace is filled with treachery. You will work closely with people you do not like, people you cannot trust, people who want your job, and people who gossip about your work ethic. Quitting is the choice of the week. Magic can quit because God blessed him with rare athletic gifts that enabled him to become a near billionaire. There's nothing righteous about what Magic did. It's privileged behavior. Quite frankly, it's embarrassing. Magic allegedly is one of sports' greatest competitors. Rob Pelinka outsmarted and outfought Magic for control of the Lakers. I want to share a personal story that's illustrative of the typical work environment. In 1994, I was hired by the Kansas City Star to be a sports columnist. I instantly set the town and the newspaper on fire. My bosses were so overjoyed by my success that in 1996, they decided to invest more heavily in the sports section of the newspaper. They decided to hire a new sports editor and gave me the final approval over the new sports editor. We hired the guy I chose. The first thing the new sports editor did was tell my bosses that I was overpaid by my previous sports editor. Then my new sports editor spent the next 2 years trying to prove that I was overpaid. At the time, I could have easily quit and moved to a different newspaper. That's not what I wanted to do. I owned that town, and I hadn't fully milked the position for all it was worth. I won the long war. I stomped out my adversaries with my work, accomplished all of my goals, and left Kansas City when it made sense for me. Quitting is for people too weak or to fight or too spoiled to know how. More Speak for Yourself after this.